The Scottish independence vote of September 2014 sent a seismic shock throughout the United Kingdom. The pro-independence movement was so animated by emotion that it appeared ready to overwhelm the comparatively bloodless arguments of those who sought to keep the Union together. But despite the fire and zeal of the nationalists, the Union held firm. 55% of Scots voted to keep their country in the United Kingdom. Passionate Scottish nationalism is certainly a threat to British unity. It played a powerful role in the Scottish Wars of Independence under Wallace and Bruce 700 years ago, but at present, it's not likely to be sufficient to break up the UK. In reality, the greatest threat to the unity of Britain lies directly with the decisions Britons make on 23 June 2016 when they vote to remain in the European Union or to leave it. The relationship with the European Union is the most important issue facing the United Kingdom at this time. No other issue dominates the political discourse so thoroughly. The EU is the greatest source of prosperity and benefit to the United Kingdom. It's the UK's largest trading partner, with 55% of British exports going there. London's alpha financial status is based, to a great extent, on global financiers having unimpeded access to Europe's 500 million people. The EU gives job opportunities on the continent for British nationals. It gives Britain even more clout on the world stage than it has on its own. But it's also the UK's single biggest headache. The British are visibly uncomfortable with the idea of uncontrolled immigration to their shores. The euro crisis that recently racked Greece and nearly sank Portugal, Italy, Ireland, and Spain is enough to give Britons pause about a complete currency union with Europe. The financial transaction tax of 2014 is regarded by many as an attempt to undermine London's financial supremacy. The British are furious that Brussels levied a £1.7 billion surcharge on Britain's EU membership fees. And they resent the EU bureaucracy with its annoying laws on employment, the environment, agriculture, and fishing. The issue is of such importance that British Prime Minister David Cameron has promised a referendum on the European Union to be held on 23 June 2016. There will only be one question on the ballot. Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union? To date, polls consistently show that support for leaving the EU is strongest in England and weakest in Northern Ireland, with Scotland and Wales maintaining a position somewhere in between the two. On average, polls over the last year show that England is roughly divided, with 51% of decided voters expressing a desire to remain in the European Union. In Wales, about 53% of respondents indicate a desire to stay, while in Scotland, 62% of decided voters surveyed wish to remain in the Union. The highest levels of support for the EU are in Northern Ireland, with 67% of decided voters expressing a pro-EU position.
Alan, what do you think of, what are your general thoughts on the UK referendum on the future in Europe?
I think Britain have had enough of being dictated to by Brussels, by the European Parliament, and times are very hard, and I think people have had enough of it, to be honest.
So can I take it you're voting to leave?
Yes, to leave the European Union.
So when you talk to people on the street, like people that you know, your friends, family, etc., what are they saying?
I think from what I've just said, I think they're of the same opinion as me. But also, since Europe got rid of the borders, lots of people can just move from one country to another. And there are people who've been, like I say, for a builder, for instance, he does a job for, say, £500. People from other countries will come along and do it for £200. So the original builder, you get put out of business. There's the question of immigration and refugees. The country's too small and there's too many people coming. There's a drain on the National Health Service. We're a small island and there's just too many people on the island, and it needs to be controlled better, I think.
How do you think the UK is going to vote?
I think the UK will vote to leave the European Union.
And what do you think? Do you think that's going to have any effect on the future of the UK?
I don't think so. I think the politicians will still do the same job as they always have done. good or bad, they'll still do the same job. I don't think anything will change.
Alan, thanks a lot. Appreciate that. Thanks for your
You're
time.
welcome.
Cheers. Thanks.
A look at history can explain the different perspectives of the constituent parts of the United Kingdom on the subject of Europe and provide some insight into why Europhobia is stronger in England than in the rest of the UK. As a major European power, England feels more keenly than the rest of the UK the loss of sovereignty that closer union with Europe entails. To be subsumed into Europe is just another step in the wrong direction, another step down from the apogee of global hegemony that is still within a century of memory. Greater incorporation into Europe likely means an erosion even of Britain's status as an autonomous middle power and a diminution of the special relationship with America and the Anglosphere. On top of all this, the idea of subordinating the famous Westminster system of government, the mother of all parliaments, that has been so assiduously cultivated over the centuries, to Brussels is deeply distressing to the English. In an article in the New Statesman, David Marquand stated that for the English, the British Empire was an English empire, and its loss was traumatic. Although the Scots and Welsh participated in the empire fully, they have responded to its loss with greater equanimity. They have sloughed off their imperial skins and rediscovered their much older national ones. More importantly than former global power, England's identity is almost entirely built on a sense of heroic separation from the continent. Since the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, the English identity has been forged in resistance to Europe. It started with Henry VIII's break with Rome, and the subsequent victory over Philip of Spain and his mighty armada. The British defied Bonaparte, and, in their finest hour, they resisted Hitler. Resisting Hitler was a hard-won victory that triumphantly affirmed British sovereignty. The idea of meekly acquiescing to European control, read German control, a mere 70 years after such a massive expenditure of blood, sweat, and tears, is more than the English psyche can bear. In truth, a unified Europe under German aegis is England's secret nightmare. The Scots, Welsh, and Irish, although full partners in Britain's fight against Bonaparte and Hitler, simply do not share the angst of Europe felt by the English. That's because their national identities are not defined in relationship to the continent. As the junior partners in the UK, they have never regarded themselves as great powers in the way England has. They have never felt the need to compare themselves to Europe's big two, France and Germany. If anything, the core Scottish and Welsh identities have been forged in defending their own sense of nationhood against their powerful English neighbour. Northern Ireland recognizes that its economic succour lies with Britain, but they are pro-EU just the same. They value their relationship and trade with the EU through a shared border with the Republic of Ireland. In short, the non-English countries of Britain regard EU membership as an opportunity, not as an existential threat. It's this divergence on Europe that is becoming the primary stressor on the fault lines of the United Kingdom. The referendum on EU membership is drawing closer. If the English vote to leave against the wishes of the Scots, Welsh, and Irish to stay, it will create a severe unity crisis. Leanne Wood, the leader of the Welsh Nationalist Party, Plaid Cymru, has said that even if one part of the UK voted against leaving, then all of Britain would be obliged to stay. Nicola Sturgeon, the leader of the Scottish National Party, is demanding veto power over any move by an English majority to secede from Europe and has warned that Scotland would hold a second referendum on independence in such an event. If Westminster insists that the vote is binding, there is a strong possibility that the nation could break up. Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland would stay in the EU, while England would be left standing defiantly on its own for a time, but with no real option but to eventually cast its lot completely with Europe and the Euro. In this scenario, we could have a future Europe that recalls the status quo of the 16th century, where the British Isles were a collection of separate, second-tier countries on the periphery of a European empire dominated by a German emperor. The Scottish referendum of September 2014 was only a tremor compared to the earthquake that could come after the UK votes on its future in Europe on 23 June 2016.